All right, Packers draft recap. A very interesting one. I thought the Packers had a very Packers draft, I guess you could say. One that I think is, they still ended up getting a pretty decent amount of talent out of this. They ended up with a ton of draft picks when it was all said and done, as you can see with this long list that is right next to me. I should mention just what the list is, what you're looking at. It's every player they drafted, what position they play, also when they were drafted. So Lucas Van Ness was drafted 13th, and where they are on the consensus big board, which Lucas Van Ness is 15th. Now, Lucas Van Ness, we'll start off with that one. I just wasn't a huge fan of his. Now, I think there's some things he can do right away that he should be able to be good at. He is definitely, very big, very physically imposing, and he kind of fits what the Packers are trying to do. I just didn't love his production in college personally. There's some minor issues. Some people talked about, how he has never started because Iowa has their, they do things differently. They don't have just their best players start. They instead feel like if you've been playing for a while, you deserve to start. But he's still got plenty of snaps. I'm not concerned about that. I would have liked to see better production out of him. I would not have drafted him 13th, but a lot of people would have, and there is still value. I can get why people like him. Then we get to tight ends. Luke Musgrave, tight end who I was never overly impressed with personally. I just wasn't. I think he's a pretty good receiving tight end. Could be able to do some stuff from that side of the coin. But as a whole, didn't play a lot in 2022. Did get a little bit of more playing time in 2021 and 2020. So maybe they just like him, given the fact that the last tape we saw of him was when he was 21. I don't hate the pick. Again, pick 42, was selected at, was projected for pick 50. Not a big deal, but again, he wasn't one of my guys necessarily. So take that, however much you care about that, take that into account. Jaden Reed was the next person they selected, wide receiver, they selected at 50, and he was projected to go 89. So we're dealing with a bit of a reach here. We are. But again, when we get to this point in the draft, it's okay to reach a little bit, and they'd like to get their receivers a little bit later on, and this is actually typically the preferred strategy. People make fun of the Packers for it, and part of it is because they didn't address the wide receiver position as desperately as they probably should have in previous years. But the reality is, you do want to kind of address the wide receiver position this way. Spend second-round picks on receivers. My expression is never let a day two go by without spending a pick on either a receiver or a safety, because, those guys hit in those rounds, so make sure you can get one. So is Jaden Reed the guy? I don't know. Wasn't great last year, but again, had a good 2021 year. Maybe they're hoping they're buying low on him, although they're buying high by spending pick 50 on him, but I digress. The next pick was Tucker Kraft, pick 78, and here's someone who was a bit of a steal in terms of the consensus big board. He was projected to go 67th. He instead goes 78th, so there you go. Feel good about that if you're a Packers fan. And again, another guy who had a better 2021 season, I would say, but not massively, has multiple years of good production at this point. And a guy who could maybe be a complete tight end. So trying for the double dip strategy a little bit. If they're both good, then cool. Run plenty of two tight end sets. Chances are they're not both going to hit, especially when you're spending pick 42 and 78, but you double dip on it. Hopefully one of them hits is, I think, at least part of the strategy. Defensive tackle Colby Wooden here, pick 166. Another guy who they reached on a little bit. Not the worst reach of the draft. We'll get into that in just a second. But, reached on him a bit, which, again, typically when you take someone who was projected to go 150th and you take him at 116th, they tend to play more like a player who should have gone 150th than 116th. That's just typically how it works. Well, yes, sometimes NFL teams are smarter than us. Usually, two brains are better than one. And when you look at the consensus of a bunch of different people, usually that's better than just one team who reaches on it. So that's why reaches tend to not work too well. But that being said, I still think he could be a solid player for them. But again, at the interior defensive line, I do pay attention to production. I pay attention to advanced analytics. His nothing special there. But again, we're talking about a guy who is, was picked over 100 picks into the draft at this point. So you're not going to get a perfect player then, of course. this is a weird pick. Quite frankly, just one I don't get at all. Sean Clifford, pick 149. I totally get getting a backup quarterback, but if you wanted a backup quarterback, you had picks earlier to get an actual decent one. He's not someone who I've paid a ton of attention to, but just a real surprise that they selected him here. And almost feels like you're lighting a pick on fire, really. I feel like you could have gotten undrafted free agents of the same caliber. But again, I'm sure they like something about him that I just didn't see when I did my evaluation of him. Diontae Wix, wide receiver, who was projected to go around here, so getting fair value with pick 159. Someone who, it's funny, you look at his Pro Football Focus page, and he was like terrible last year. How they graded him, they were not a fan of his tape whatsoever. He was towards the bottom of the league in every single category, but had a really good 2021 year, and that's again another one, kind of a trend with this team. They're buying low. Maybe they feel like they have something there, and those guys are getting slept on. Possibly. That might be the case. It might not. I don't know. But it is interesting. Carl Brooks, I don't get why this guy fell. He has really good analytics. I think he's someone who I would have thought could be I'm very, very surprised he fell as far as he did, quite frankly. I mean, you look at, was pick one, was on the consensus big board at pick 115, falls to 179. That's a massive drop. I don't really get it. Seemed like he has good analytics, played at Bowling Green. I don't know, 300 pounds, 6'4", should be able to not just stop the run, but also be able to rush the pass from the inside. I'm confused, and he got better every year in college. I don't really get it. That feels like a steal for me. Anders Carlson, kicker. Listen, getting a quality kicker with pick 207 would be awesome. The issue is that they're really fluky and you don't know if they're going to be good or not. That's the only issue with drafting kickers. The positional value is worth it for kickers at that point. It is. It's hard to know, how good they're going to be. They don't always hit is the real issue with them. So, yeah. We then have, a couple of guys that had 4 picks past the 230 mark. Usually these guys end up just being like special teamers. Carrington Valentine, Lou Nichols III, halfback Anthony Johnson Jr., safety, and then Grant Dubois, not sure exactly how you say that, but 4 players, when they play those positions, you kind of expect them to be special teams guys. That's not necessarily to say that that's all they hope they can be, but you expect them to at least be able to be contributors in special teams, and maybe you'll be able to do more. So, as a whole, again, it's a very Packers draft. This is a very Gutenkirst style of draft. This is what, they're kind of trying to run the scheme that LaFleur likes to run with these players, and we'll see how well it works out. So as a whole, I think it's a fine draft, but it's definitely a bit of a weird one, which is kind of really sums up a lot of the Packers drafts these past few years. At least that's how I feel. But yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.